Chapter 2, Task 2. Today we're going to talk about finding the area of composite shapes. The only thing different about Task 1 and Task 2 is that this time finding composite shapes just means we're going to put two or more shapes together. So to find the area, the first step is going to be to cut into normal shapes, and I'll show you that in just a second. And to do that, take a look at number 1 here. As you can see, we have this odd looking shape, and if we just continue this line here, it would make 2 rectangles. So step 2 says to find the area of each part. If you recall from the last chapter, area would be the length times the width. So we're going to do that. The length and the width of this first triangle would be 10 times 6, which we know is 60. So let's go ahead and find our second rectangle, which is this guy here. So you can see the length and the width is 3 times 5, which we know is 15. The next step is to, so we did number 2, we found the area of each part. Number 3, and the final step is just to add them all up. So we're going to take the area of the first rectangle, which was 60, and we're going to add it to the area of the second rectangle, which was 15. And we know that 60 plus 70 plus 15 is 75. So the area of this composite shape is 75. Let's take a look at number 2 over here. We're going to do the exact same steps. So we're going to cut them into normal shapes. And here's our first one. So we're going to find the area of the first one, length times width again. So 6 times 8, we know is 48. Second rectangle here. And the length and the width in this case is 12 and 7. So we're going to multiply them together. And we know that gives us 84. And the final step is to add the 2 together, which gives us 132. Take a look at number 3. It has kind of stair-step shape here. So we are going to look at each individual rectangle. And as you can see, the width of each rectangle is 5, but we don't know the length of the blue one, the green one, or the red one just yet. We can see that the length and the width of the purple guy is 5 times 5, which gives us 25. We got to do a little thinking to figure out the length of number 5. So all we got to do is look over here. If this side length is 5 and this side length is 5, then altogether it would be 5 plus 5, which would be 10. So in this case, it would be 10 times 5, which we know is 50. We're going to do the same type of thinking for the green one. We know that the width is 5. Well, if the red one is 10, we're just going to add 5 more because this indicates the length here. Additional length is 5. So we are going to do 15 times 5, which gives us 75. And lastly, we're going to look at the blue. Again, we know the width is 5. If the green length is 15, we're just going to add 5 more. 15 and 5 is 20. Multiply it by the 5. So we know that's 100. Last step is to add them all together. And when we add 100 plus 75 plus 50 plus 25, remember we're adding those guys, we get 250. Moving on to number 4, we have a rectangle, so we're going to cut them into normal shapes. That's the first one I saw. And then the second normal shape I see is a triangle, and that's okay. We can go back to our notes from last unit or last task 1, I'm sorry, this is task 2. We can go back to task 2 and find that the area of a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. On the rectangle, we're still going to use the length times the width, and luckily they just give it to us. So we have 9 times 3, which gives us 27. Now we have to find the area of the rectangle here. So the area, we always use 1/2. We're going to find the base. If you recall, the base is the bottom of the triangle. So we're going to have to do some thinking here. If this portion of the base is 2, and this portion is 2, we don't know this portion unless we look over here. So actually, we're going to have to add the 2, 3, and 2 to give us our base. And we can do that. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We just add them up, gives us 7. Now, the last part of the area for a triangle is the height. And if we recall, it's the bottom to the top, which in this case is 5. Put that in your calculator. And you get 17.5. Remember, the last step is to add the areas of both shapes together. So don't forget that last step. We're going to add, and you get 44.5. Number 5, same thing. First step, cut them into 2 shapes. I see a triangle up top, and actually this is a square. I know it's a square because if this is 8 and this is 8, then this is also 8. Which helps me solve my triangle there in a second. I'm going to do the rectangle first just because I think it's easiest. Length times width would be 8 times 8, which gives us 64. And then we're going to use the area of a triangle formula again for this guy. So the area is always 1/2 the base times the height. In this case, the base is the bottom number, which would be 8. And the height is up and down is 6, and that gives us 24. Remember to add the 2 areas together to get our final answer, which in this case would be 88.